Hello and welcome to everybody. I'm Tanya Leek, the Director of Research for the White Dress Project, and we're so excited to share with you our conversation around brunch with a couple of patients and a doctor, and we're going to just let you listen in on our conversation and hope that you get something out of it besides getting hungry, because we're having some fantastic stuff. This is part of the Empowered Patient Tour with the White Dress Project, and we will be in a city near you, so please check the website, pin post, and the account. So with that, I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves really quickly. I mentioned my name is Tanya Leek, and I am the Director of Research. I also have had a fibroid experience, which I'll be sharing. I will pass it over to our physician for today.
So hi everyone, my name is Chantel Jiggets. I'm a board certified OBGYN. I have a special focus in minimally invasive GYN surgery. I'm very excited to talk about fibroids. I love fibroids, and just educating, patients about women's health in general. I do. I love fibroids.
I don't know if anybody out there loves fibroids, but we appreciate the physician perspective of wanting to help us with them.
Hello, my name is Lataria Robinson, and I also have my fibroids removed. I like talking about my experience versus actually loving fibroids in itself. So.
And we have one person who's also joining us who will not be on camera. And you want to just say who you are?
Sure. So I'm Kimberly, and grew up with Tanya, and as she has had an experience with fibroids, so have I. And I ended up having a hysterectomy to remove my fibroids, but I started with UFE, and we'll talk about that as well. But
yep. So thank you for joining us. We hope that you will join a brunch in your city. We are at a wonderful place called Elm+Good in Dallas. If you're in Dallas, check it out. It's also a Black historical location, so there's always that as well. And I'm gonna, we'll look forward to hearing from the medical professionals, but as well the patients and what we're all experiencing, and hopefully we'll be able to leave with some insights and maybe some new to-dos in this challenge of the fibroid epidemic. So I also want to mention that we are having, this is my little commercial, we have a signature mocktail, which you will have at any brunch that you attend, and it is a strawberry basil spritzer, and I'm telling you, this is delicious. It is a mocktail though, so it is not delicious in the way that you might have wanted. So if you come to a brunch, you can bring your flask if you feel like you need to add to that. All right. So with that, why don't we get started? And I'm sorry to do this to you, Dr. Jiggins. Before you dig into those buttermilk pancakes, do you want to just give a quick overview of what a uterine fibroid is?
So a uterine fibroid, it's basically an overgrowth. It's a monoclonal proliferation is what they call it. It's an overgrowth of a muscle cell within the fibroid. So for most women, it's benign. It's something that 75% of all women have, but it's definitely something that affects the African American population a little bit more. Some studies show that African Americans are a little bit more symptomatic when it comes to their fibroids as well. So it's something that we were kind of talking off the stream that definitely if you have some symptoms of fibroids, which could be bulk symptoms, pain with intercourse, could be a lot of bleeding. You'll get the proper imaging and the workup for it, but a lot of times people don't even know if they have fibroids. Yeah. Sometimes until pregnancy,
or trying
to get pregnant, and they realize that they can't, and they realize it that way. So it's definitely a prevalent issue.
and it's interesting because so we were talking earlier, and Latira was telling us that you had an episode of hot flashes.
I did.
During your experience.
when I had fibroids, I had first found out when I was 22 years old. And what happened was my cycle just changed out of nowhere. And so I was like, okay, I need that insurance. Like, let me go.
So wait, before you go on,
out.
how did your cycle change?
I started throwing up. My cramps got extremely
Really
bad.
Okay.
To where I was throwing up, and I was like, I have never experienced this before. And I was in college, so I'm like, was it something I ate? Like, what's going on? And so I went to the doctor. They put me on birth control, and I'm thinking like it's gonna go into effect really quick. It did not. Birth control probably only made my cycle regular more than it helped at all. Depo never took. Oral birth control never took. So, yes. On my cycles, with my cycles, I would have hot flashes, and I'm talking about, like, it could be, it's 43 degrees out right now, and I'll be like, all right, y'all, like, I gotta step outside. And they're like, why are you running? It's cold. And I'm like, I'm going through the change. And my fibroids actually came from genetics. Both of my maternal and paternal grandmother had them. My aunts on my paternal side, my aunts on my maternal side, my mom had them. Everyone got them.
Did they talk about it?
They did.
Oh.
But the thing is, my sisters didn't get them. My sisters did not get fibroids. And I'm like, oh, that's just fair, ain't it? Like, what? But I was actually the first person to get surgery. And I was the first person to actually just want to fix the problem because back in the day, you can go get a DNC.
Yeah.
And that was the easiest thing. But now we're in the 2020s and stuff. And so I'm like, they don't have that no more. Like, you have to get a hysterectomy. You have to get a myomectomy. And so I was the first person in my family to do it. And my cousins, they're always like, oh, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to get my surgery. And I'm like, no, y'all not.
So you have cousins who have fibroids, but they have not done anything yet.
No, they haven't.
What do you think is have you talked to them about what's preventing them from?
I've talked to my cousins and also a lot of different women, and really and truly, the main common factor is PTO, short-term disability.
That's real.
On short-term disability, you only get 60% of your pay. So now, like, they have to figure out, how can I afford to get this surgery while also afford to take care of my bills and keep things going? And that was one of the main things that I've heard every woman talk about. And
What industries are they in?
Some are in like communications, some are at insurance companies, different walks of life, different careers. But still, when it comes to insurance, when you're on short-term disability, they only pay that 60%.
Yeah, because not to interrupt, but my surgery was covered by insurance. I was on short-term disability for 7 weeks. I think.
Did you get full pay?
And I got full pay. So I think the anomaly might be the fact that the firm is essentially only responsible for 60%. The insurance would bridge the gap, such that you are still getting your full pay when you're on disability.
So is that disability insurance you're talking about, or is that?
So it's still, my pay still came to me as a full paycheck, as a regular paycheck. But I'm saying the disability portion, and probably behind the scenes in an HR and payroll way, the firm is only responsible for 40%, and disability is paying for 60%. But your paycheck should look the same. It should not change.
So that's and thank you for bringing that up. I don't know that one, that is a concern that might be out there, and two, that there is this opportunity to have a conversation with HR. So perhaps you can take that back to your friends. We'll be looking into that, and hopefully so that's my to do. I will take that back and find out so that we can kind of communicate this, because if this is something that's being missed in terms of a benefit that you can take advantage of, then it will allay those fears and allow, because I will say that I know with my, family, I have had experiences where, people waited to address their fibroids, and that can have its own sort of ramifications, especially depending on how old you are. But now I'm gonna actually back to Dr. Jiggins, and I think I actually pronounced your name wrong because I thought it was an R. So I was like,
Listen.
is it Dr.
It happens all the time.
But
it's okay.
we mentioned DNC, myomectomy,
Yeah.
hysterectomy. Do you want to kind of talk about the procedure?
So yeah, I definitely wanted to discuss that because, like you said, back in the day we only had certain options. So you speak to your parents, your aunts, and all of that, and they'll tell you something. But we do have a lot of options now that are not just hysterectomy or removing the fibroids. We have a lot of minimally invasive procedures as well. So when I'm breaking it down for my patients, I go from least invasive to most invasive. So you have medications, right? So a lot of it is hormonal medication. So that's like birth control. For fibroids, the research actually shows, we're using this, birth control, but it's really not super helpful for fibroid abnormal bleeding. So you can try birth control pills. You can try, things like an IUD, things like that. But it's definitely not specifically for bleeding control for fibroids. Mm-hmm. There's stronger medication that we have now that basically kind of works more at the brain level. So that's our GnRH agonist, antagonist. So I know people are familiar with Lupron, which is the medication that is going to put you into like a menopause feeling. But there's other medications that give you a little bit less of that menopause symptoms. That's pretty helpful. The other information, we have different procedures that you can do. So like you said, a uterine artery ablation. I know we talked about that. Mm-hmm. Is an option where you don't really have to take off of work for a significant amount of time. We also have radio frequency ablations that we do now. We do it MRI based. You could do it in the operating room as a same day surgery. Go home the same day. You could do it laparoscopically as well. And you can go home the same day. And then we have minimally invasive removal of your fibroids. So, if you have an open myomectomy, you may be in the hospital for a few days. You may be down for a significant amount of time.
8 weeks.
Yeah, the whole 8 weeks.
Well, actually, because there are so many options available, and it really depends on a number of different things. So we don't have to go into, this suggests this, but what are some of the things that people should be talking about with their doctor in terms of size, location? We were talking about some of those things earlier.
So a lot of the information is just going to be really specific for you, what you want, and then what type of fibroids do you have? Where are they located? Are they in the lining of your uterus? Are they inside the muscle, or are they hanging off the side of the uterus? Those are going to give you completely different problems. And then it depends,
different treatments.
And different side effects from the treatments, depending on where your fibroids are. Certain treatments may not be a good option for you. The other part is, do you want to have children? Are you done with childbearing? That can definitely kind of gear things into a different direction. And then what are you looking for? Some people are saying, they don't want fibroids at all, right? So that may mean, a surgery. That may mean a hysterectomy. If you remove your fibroids, they can come back. So that's something also to know and understand. And then with like medical treatment, it may decrease your bleeding, but it may not effectively treat it at all. Right. Or even, maybe you just want like a little help. Mm-hmm. Right? You may not want a surgery, but you just need it to be like a little more tolerable. So you can try, medication's helpful for that. Right. So
okay, thank you.
No, and that's actually a good point because hysterectomy wasn't my first option. I went the UFE route, and I think that was in 2017. And it was because essentially, I knew at that point I had fibroids. I mentioned to Tanya that, my doctor had indicated, over several years I had them. I was doing transvaginal ultrasounds, just to see if they were changing in size. But kind of what happened was all of a sudden I started having heavier and heavier periods. And I was like, what's going on? And so he's, suggested I see radiologists and consider UFE, which I subsequently did. And, there was shrinkage, all that stuff. Thought I was good. Periods lightened up to the point where they just went away. So, I thought I was already in menopause, and then all of a sudden 2 years ago, literally this one day, I had I woke up with bleeding, and by the time I got to work, it was like a full-on period, heavy as before I had the UFE. And I'm like, what?
And you said it was like every hour you had to change.
Yeah, I was
tampons,
having
right?
to change tampon every hour, all of that. Yes, I was like, oh, wait, we're not going back in the
There's so much trauma.
Yes, we're not going back, because at that point I hadn't even had a period in about 2 plus years, I think. I think I was almost at 3 years. And I was like, oh, no. And I got on the phone so quickly with my GYN, and they scheduled me for emergency biopsy the following day. And fortunately, it wasn't anything serious other than the fact that the fibroids were back. They were probably bigger than what they had been before. And I was like, well, again, we're not going backwards. So if hysterectomy is my next option, then that's what we're doing.
And you got a laparoscopic.
So, well, it started as laparoscopic. The intention for surgery going in was it was going to be done laparoscopically, but essentially, both because of the, I call them the shriveled up,
The ones from the Eufy,
yes. But also the size of the new ones were so large she could not do it laparoscopically. So I ended up having a bikini cut, and so I ended up being in the hospital 4 days.
Okay.
I went in on Thursday and I came out on Sunday, so about 4 days. So, yeah.
Well, and I want to, thank you for sharing. I think one of the things is, Dr. Jiggins just went through a host of options. And one thing that we always say with the White Dress Project is, if your doctor tells you hysterectomy is your only option, and there isn't a whole host of reasons for that, we still usually would recommend you get a second opinion, because there are just so many ways that you can go about it based on what your preferences are, what your situation is, based on, as we mentioned, location, size, number. So, please make sure that, and we were talking about this earlier, is that a second opinion for some people is more than a notion, right? Depending on your insurance coverage, et cetera, your co-pays. So we understand that it's not always easy, but hopefully if you reach out to us at the White Dress Project, we can get you some support in terms of, I know there's probably our communications person saying, no, don't say that, because we might get a bunch of emails, but, DM us, whatever, if you're really sort of struggling in terms of the second opinion, because we do have, doctors that are very respectful, I guess I would say, of your needs, and just understand that there are many, many options. And so when someone tells you there's only one option, that is likely not true. And again, every situation is different, and it may be, a crisis situation or other. And again, this is not to say anything bad about hysterectomy or medical management. It's a matter of, hysterectomy. I know people who have been very happy that they got the hysterectomy because it remedied a lot of things for them. But again, just know that you do have options. It's just a matter of what you want and what you need. So with that, I want to go back to actually something we talked about earlier, because you said you saw
Six.
six
I
doctors.
saw four doctors.
Four doctors.
Prior to me actually getting my fibroids removed.
Okay.
So
did you know, had you been already diagnosed?
No.
Okay.
So once I graduated from college and I had a full-time job and good insurance.
Comes back in again. That insurance is always there.
Yeah, so that's when I went in, and mind you, I was 22 years old at the time. So I went to an OBGYN. She was a black woman, and the first thing she said was, she was like, "Oh, we have to do a hysterectomy," and I was like, "I'm 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You want me to think about my entire life right now at this moment? This isn't going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up moving from Houston back to Dallas, and I ended up seeing another doctor, and he's Chinese. He's a great doctor. Do not get me wrong, he's a great doctor, but he wanted to monitor my fibroids until I had kids. And now I'm 23, and I'm like, I don't even know if I want kids.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are making me have these life decisions really early. So a few years later, at 26, I came across, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I came across a black lady, and I remember I was cramping so bad at work. And she was like, "You got fibroids, don't you?" And I was like, "Yes." "How do you know? Can you tell me?" What's going on? And she was like, "My doctor is amazing. Dr. Carlos is amazing. He's at Medical City, Building D." And she said he prayed with me before he actually had surgery. And I was like, oh, that's all that,
that's all you had to hear. That's all you had to
he prayed with you? And so Dr. Carlos, he was so patient with me, and I won't lie to you, I was shallow. I was like, I don't want no cut. Like, why are you cutting on me? Let's try to like nurse these things and shrink these things. And then he was like, okay. So we went through Depo. Depo never took to my body. My cycle never stopped with Depo. We did oral birth control, and the oral birth control, it only like controlled. And then finally, Dr. Carlos, he was like, listen, I'm retiring. You're going to go down the hall with Dr. Parnell. And so I was like, okay, cool. So then I get to Dr. Parnell, and he's like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. All right, I already know your history, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is COVID now. This is 2020. And so his nurse called me, Nurse Rebecca. She was like, hey, you're scheduled for your surgery. Like, they were done playing with me. They were done playing with me. They were just like, you're scheduled for this day. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But at the time during COVID, they were only doing elective surgery. So I had to wait from April up until June 10th, which was fine because I was like, oh, I can get my mind together. Like, I can prepare myself. And so I went in on June 10th, and my surgery took longer because once he did cut me open, he found more fibroids than what the original sonograms showed. And so I can tell you, I woke up and I was like, how I look? What's going on in there? Like, my aunt would tell you, she was like, he cut you good. And I was like, oh yes. And prior to me actually having my fibroids removed, I at least had 3 blood transfusions first. And so I was hospitalized at least 3 times. And then I actually had to have a blood transfusion during surgery. But I can tell you, since June 10th, 2020, I have not had any blood transfusions. So that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yes.
I think my biggest recommendation or advice for women who's had a myomectomy: keep taking your iron supplements, keep taking your vitamin D. Like, your body is not perfect.
Vitamin
at
D.
all, so you just want to make sure that you're taking your vitamins and you're taking all the necessary steps to at least prevent them from coming back. Now, I know Dr. Parnell, he did tell me, he was like, you're getting a myomectomy. They will come back. Only one has come back, and that's fine. We don't have 1,000 down there like we did before, so that's good. Like, I can deal with that. My cycles are lighter. They went from 7-8 days to 3 days. I got my life back, and that's the biggest thing when it comes to actually taking care of your body and taking care of your fibroids. You get your life back. I feel like I got a restart on life. I love it here. I love it here. And I recommend, women to actually don't be insecure, don't be shallow. There's someone who's actually dealt with it before. There could be someone next to you who's dealing with it that
likely
doesn't want to talk.
They don't
talk
likely
about it.
someone next to you.
And that's the thing, we've grown up in homes where it's like, you don't tell your business, you don't talk about that stuff.
Especially not
this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think me being open, because I wrote about it on my blog, and so many women approached me about it, and even my friends, they're like, hey, I forwarded your blog to my friends. She actually is going to your doctor, and I'm like, yes, Dr. Parnell, give me a hookup when I come in there, because I need that, but it's always good to share my story as well as listen to other women's story, because at first I thought my story was bad. I thought I had the worst, but then I'm hearing other women, I'm like, oh my God, what?
Yes.
So.
And I appreciate your sharing, because I will say my experience, the first doctor I saw was a black woman. And I think that people are always like, okay, well, we need to have more black women doctors and we wouldn't have, the issues that we have. Listen, my doctor wound up being a white Israeli man. So, I think that you really, please don't be biased because sometimes where you find the care that you need is maybe where you least expect it. So I think that that's really, really important. Not to slight this black woman here.
No, of course not. Of course not. But definitely what I want to say to that, because we talked about this, being the medical person in your family, you end up with a lot of questions. You end up being a pediatrician, for your cousin, you end up being a rheumatologist for your aunt.
You didn't know how many specialties you're going to have to focus on.
But, there's just a lot of information that, you need to get from your provider. So I feel like a lot of what I do is just trying to facilitate good conversations with my family and their providers. I think a lot of people, they practice this paternalistic medicine where, kind of like you said, like you went, to see one provider, they said, this is what you need. You went to see another provider, they said, this is what you need. And I speak to my parents the same way, they say, yeah, they put me on this medication. Well, why? Because there's a lot of medication. Like, did you ask that question, So it's just getting comfortable with your provider should take what you want into account. They should not tell you what you should do. It should be a conversation. So
yeah.
Well, I will say that's the part that was sick. He was sick of me because he was like, "We're not doing no more birth control. Like, we're past this. Your body is tired, and we are tired of you having these fibroids." I was like, "Me too, me too." So I was more appreciative.
But he walked that path with you until
exactly.
Yeah.
So he probably
listened to you.
Knew that these things we're not going to work, but that's part of it is listening to your patient, and it's your process. This is your fibroid journey. So if you want to try something, I'm very open to that. This is a journey. It's not a one visit. Right. This is what we're going to do. That's it.
And I know that there are folks out there who it is difficult because if you're in pain, if you're bleeding, and we've got on our white, right? This is all about hope and the ability to wear white again without worrying that you'll be showing something up. It can be challenging, and I encourage you to, and I hope that everyone has some sort of support network, their tribe, that if you've got a position, I mean, you got to make sure you have your healthcare proxy. One, that's a whole separate thing, but you should have someone that you feel like you can tell what your goals are. And if you feel like you get in the doctor's office and you feel intimidated, some people do within doctor's offices. If you feel like you can't express it, if you feel like you just don't have the energy because you're dealing with the stuff around the fibroid, then please bring your friend. That is entirely allowed. You are responsible for your own health. And if you feel like you need that support with you, please take advantage of that. I have done that for people in my life, and it makes a big difference because those people can advocate once they know what your wishes are, and especially someone that's close to you that you can have that conversation. So again, if you feel like that's not something that you're able to do, and or your doctor is pushing back, I mean, that might be a case of, find someone else. But if you can't and you need help pushing your agenda, then please reach out and leverage your support network.
The other thing I wanted to mention as well is that we all probably have our own interests in the field of OBGYN. So a lot of our training is basically it's split. So it's split between pregnancy and all the complications and everything that comes with pregnancy, but it's also split between gynecology. So the other issue is, just kind of understanding, who is your provider? Are they someone who, they're very interested in obstetrics and pregnant patients, versus someone who's interested and has the expertise and, just the interest really in gynecology. Mm-hmm. So, you may be speaking to an OBGYN about your fibroids, but maybe, that's really not what they do. So that's kind of the other, understanding that I feel like, I just want the patients to have when they go and they look for a provider.
Yes. Yeah. And I did find my provider, the surgeon that I went with, based on someone's recommendation, like you. So again, your support network is potentially and we got to start talking about it in order for people to know that we need the recommendation. So, okay, I'm not going to let that go yet.
I know.
But just thank you. It keeps coming, y'all. It keeps coming. This is what the brunch is like.
Do you want to put it on the side?
I can put it off to the side for you.
Thank you.
Just put it here.
So I know we're just giving you a little bit of a snippet of what a brunch, an empowered patient brunch with the White Dress Project is like. I think we've been joined by someone, so I wanted to invite you to join us, and that you can kind of. And I think she's got to run. So here we go. Do you want to come on over and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey everybody. Hi. I'm Dr. Shepard, and have done so much work with the White Dress Project. Tanika and I go way back, and we've done so many projects just looking at women and their journey with fibroids. And as a minimally invasive surgeon,
Okay. This is
just,
family.
Just the options that we see and have been trained to do, and how that really helps patients make better decisions for themselves. And really, in that journey, there can be so much confusion or opinions that are heard that many women don't know where to start, what to do next. And I mean, that's our job, to be advocates, but I do believe, in the healthcare system there have been a lot of barriers and obstacles to how women can come to a decision that suits them best. And for many years I've been told what to do and how they should approach it. And so I'm just here to support this Empowered Patient Brunch series, which is sponsored by Myovant. And they also too have had a lot of impact when looking at research and medications that are actually helpful for managing some of the bleeding symptoms outside of birth control and outside of some of the things that we've used for years. So we are in Dallas. I have been a minimally invasive surgeon for a very long time. I am very old. And have been
No, we don't say that. We don't say that. You have a lot of wisdom.
I've been, yes.
And experience.
Experience, yes. I've been doing this for 15 years. And I think the best person to do fibroid minimally invasive surgery in Dallas is right here, as you have seen and heard. And she is also at Baylor. And I am so glad that she's here, because I can pass the torch onto her, because she's been trained amazingly. We've worked together in the OR, which makes me very happy, because to have two experienced surgeons in an operating room is it's like a joy. And so to be able to have her here and support all of the women in Dallas, I will actually share her information with Tanika and the White Dress Project, so that you guys who are here in Dallas know that there is someone here who's an amazing advocate and truly knows how to operate her butt off. So that's what I would say. And
so what is it? She gave you a pretty cut.
We very rarely make open incisions. We make very, very small incisions. I mean, tiny, and we can take out very big masses out of small incisions. And that's the time that we took to do extra training, so that people have the advantage of having smaller incisions, decreased recovery time, less blood loss,
Less complications.
yes,
in
less
general.
complications. And but that that really
Get back to work.
Yes, get back to work.
Yes.
So insurance.
But I think that that's important to know, because I feel, not to say that being open is a disadvantage, but to have that extra training, to have a smaller incision, I'm a very big advocate for doing it for over 10 years now. Some of the cases that we have seen, we know that it can be done. And so I will shout from the hilltop of finding the right surgeon and someone who is dedicated in time and experience to dealing with fibroids makes a big difference. And so that's what we're able to provide. And I'm just I know I was talking to my sister before I walked in, I'm I am so confident in the training that we have done that it can be done minimally invasive. And even if we have to open, we still make that incision really small. And we just, that's our focus and that's our mission. And so if you have fibroids, and even if it doesn't always have to lead to surgery, there are other options like radiofrequency ablations, which is through the Acessa procedure, that can be done. So I think many people don't even know the breadth of what can be done and what's newer in technology. Radiofrequency is very new technology, but it is very impactful. It's been used for years in other types of surgeries. They used it for liver for decades now. And so now they're just using that same technology to help with fibroids. Uterine artery embolization, that's still a great option. And I send a lot of patients to my colleague here, Dr. Slonim, We have a great relationship, so she sends me patients, I send patients to her. And that's the beauty of not necessarily saying everyone has to get a hysterectomy or everyone has to get a myomectomy, is that there's other options. And so for me as a surgeon, I'm very, very open to referring patients, getting patients to that person who's really going to impact them in the best way that is for them because of their journey, rather than saying everyone has to fall under the category of either taking a birth control pill or having a big incision, you know, for a myomectomy or hysterectomy. So again, I do not hoard patients. I feel if there is something else that's going to serve them better, by all means, go and get that other option and that other procedure, whatever it is that you need. So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have been very blessed in interacting with doctors like Dr. Shepard or Dr. Gibbons that actually are interested in what patients are interested in.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I mean, I've heard so many stories, and I had my own story. You know, again, the first Black woman doctor that I saw with regard to treating it, it was hysterectomy. We can schedule you in 2 weeks. And she had done a digital exam, and that was it. We hadn't done ultrasound, we hadn't done MRI, we hadn't done anything.
Wow.
No imaging. It was just like, okay, we're ready, we can go to hysterectomy. It was like, go straight to jail. So, you know, it is really, really important that you feel heard. And if your gut is telling you you're not feeling heard, then please, please, please do what you can. I understand it's not always possible. And then, you know, the other thing is, I think one of the biggest considerations in terms of your treatment options, besides kind of the actual sort of status of the fibroid, size, number, location, is what your goals are. And I heard Latera saying basically she felt like she had to make that decision right away. But if you have any thoughts that you would like to have children, et cetera, that is something to share with your provider to make sure that you're weighing that into the decision and you understand the trade-offs with respect to that. Did you guys want to add anything on that?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, I feel like, you know, I love to operate, you know, that's what I'm trained to do.
Because you love fibroids.
So, I love fibroids. But, you know, I think patients sometimes they're confused when they come talk to me in the office because they didn't know about all these other options for their fibroids. And, you know, after listening to them tell me, you know, what they want for themselves, you know, they want to have children, you know, they, you know, don't want anything, you know, whatever it is that's specific to you. You know, there are other options, you know, other than, you know, hysterectomy or removing your uterus. And, you know, it's just kind of disappointing sometimes when patients come and they say, you know, yeah, I've been to a few providers and they haven't heard of these options, you know, so.
Well, can I say, we did our first survey last year, and the research that we have is on average, to diagnose alone, people see 3 providers. This was on average.
Wow.
And then on average, and I think we actually had someone, I don't know if this was hyperbole, she said she saw 100 providers to finally find her surgeon. And I was like, is that like 100? I saw 100, or is that you literally saw 100 providers? Because that's
Hopefully
a lot
not.
of, that's great insurance if you didn't have to pay anything for that. And it's a whole lot of money if you did. But the bottom line is to find the right, you know, person, especially if you do decide to go the surgical route, that can take some time. And so I think we had somewhere in the order of like 10 was about the number. And I mean, that was scary. I mean, we had, you know, 900 some odd people respond, and they're seeing up to 10 different folks to talk about the procedure that they're going to have until they finally decide on the one. So it is one of those things where, you know, once you find someone that really is acknowledging of your goals and your needs, and that you feel comfortable with. You have to feel comfortable. We haven't talked about that, but that was another thing that we found in the surveys, that out of all of the lifestyle options, and I think this is something that even occurs if you decide to take a surgical route, stress management was the one that most women said was either somewhat or very effective in terms of them experiencing some decrease in symptoms. And I'm a big, you know, advocate of mindset. And so you can't go into surgery being worried about your surgeon. That is going to affect your outcomes, you know. So if you have to find someone that you're comfortable with, or, you know, and again, bring in your support network, bring in whatever you need to do to make sure that you are at a place of peace with your decision in terms of going to surgery.
Absolutely.
Anything to add, Kimberly? All right, well, we're going to wrap it up so we can actually have the rest of our food. But we hope that you join a Empowered Patient Brunch near you. As was mentioned, our sponsors, Myavant, and we really are grateful for their help in bringing this information out to you. And then we just wanted to, since we had a very intimate group for this one, there may be larger groups in your city, we really just want to bring you in on the conversation because this is a conversation that we need to have around more breakfast tables. So thank you everyone who's joined or has watched it, and I hope that you learned something and that you've taken something away. And if you live in Dallas, you definitely have some information. So whether it's you or someone you know, you now got 2 doctors' names to rely on.
Please refer.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.